Hey, 3 weeks ago, we kicked off a series called Brand New. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you have like a weekly sitcom that you watch on TV, but if you miss an episode, at the beginning of the next episode, they kind of give you a recap. And so if this is your first Sunday or you missed last Sunday, the first part of this message is going to be a kind of a recap of where we've been the last couple weeks so you don't just feel like you're in the middle. Hey, listen, the whole idea behind this series called Brand New is this up here. We're going to put it on the screen. Despite all the new we've created and discovered, humanity has the same problems. We have the same old problems. Think about this. Like in history, we've created a lot of cool new stuff in the last couple hundred years. I mean, we have electricity, right? We put a man on the moon. We have cars. We have cell phones. We have the internet. We have Wi-Fi. Listen, we have some cool technology. For all the new medical things that we've created, listen, we can replace a person's human heart. We can laser your eyes so you can see better. We've created new political systems. We've created new economic systems. We've created some new educational systems. Matter of fact, we even created some new social norms. But here's what we know. Despite all the new that we've created and discovered, you and I and we still end up with the same old problems. And way back in week 1, here's what we said. Listen, the good news is Jesus brought a new to get rid of the old. And here's the thing. As soon as I say Jesus, like Jesus has mixed review, especially in Western American culture. And what we discovered is this is weird because the new that Jesus brought was basically love God the way Jesus did, love others the way Jesus did, and love your enemies the way Jesus did. Why would anyone think badly about Jesus if that's what Jesus brought? And what we discovered is people aren't offended with Jesus. They're offended with the old that his followers bring with them. And we discovered this back in week 1. This is the truth. We're held back by what we hold on to. And then week 2, we asked this question, what is this old that we hold on to? Why does the old stay? And we kind of recapped it, and we're going to put it up here on the screen. It says, listen, God created a family. Listen, a family requires love. And for there to be love, there needs to be a choice. God didn't want robots. God wanted a real relationship, wanted a family. He's loving, he's good, so he created this family. And to have love requires choice. And so God gave humanity this choice, men and women. You can choose to decide what is good and evil, or you can allow God to decide what is good and evil. And so he put a tree in the garden. God gave them a whole planet, remember? He gave them a whole planet, gave them the gift of sex and royalty, and they chose, the original family rebelled. They decided they wanted to decide what was good. They wanted to decide what was bad and evil, and we have the planet that we get now. But God in his love and his mercy, who loves and cares for us, God created a new family to reach the old family. Listen, God didn't start a new family just to stick it to the old family. God was so heartbroken that he wanted to reach the rest of the world that he created this new family out of one guy named Abraham, right? He created this whole new family, and their job was to reach the rest of the world, and God would speak to them and use them and show them through power, privilege, and prosperity, and that was kind of their job. Unfortunately, this new family rebels. Even though God did everything he said he would for them, they wanted to decide how to use power, privilege, and prosperity and not use it for the good of others, but for themselves. And they rebelled, and they turned a relationship into religion. And you would figure after the second one, God would just give up, but God doesn't give up, which leads us to where we're at today, which is kind of where we left off last week, which is this. Rebellion and religion all boil down to the same thing. It's where I decide, right? In rebellion, I decide what is good. In rebellion, I decide what is evil. And it goes, it's my way, me first, and it's your fault. And religion is where I decide what God looks like. I don't get conformed into God's image. I make God into the image that I want him to be. And instead of God telling me what he would like for me, I tell God what I'm willing to give him. And instead of God telling me what and how I should treat people, I tell God how I'm going to treat people. I decide. And at the bottom of both rebellion and religion, I decide, leads us to a truth that you've experienced and I've experienced and we've experienced. The end result of that is I thrive at the expense of others. And so we're all caught up to where we're at today, which is when I decide and you decide and we decide what is right, what is good, what is true, what is evil. We always will choose putting ourselves ahead, even if it means putting others behind. Matter of fact, I just want to say it in a simple way so that everyone will get it. Matter of fact, I'm going to put it on the sleeve. It's kind of our opening idea. When we decide what's best, when you decide, when I decide, when we decide what's best, we naturally pick what's best for us. Right? Like when we decide what's best, we always think what's best for us. And listen, here's what I discovered. I was kind of sad when I wrote this because I realized that unfortunately this is true of me too. Matter of fact, just a couple months ago, I'm going to give you an embarrassing story that's true about me. I always tell you, like, listen, we're all equal. We all need Jesus equally. We're all equal at the foot of the cross. And so your pastor's going to tell you what a moron he was a couple months ago, right? And so a couple months ago, I had to go somewhere, and I didn't know where I was going, and I was driving on the main highway, and I was using my GPS, and my GPS was speaking to me, and I don't know about you, but I hate driving. I need Apple to come up with a teleportation device, right? So I don't have to drive everywhere, right? But I was driving, I was kind of zoning out. It was a beautiful day. I was listening to music and kind of just like, right? And I'm just going down the road, right? And all of a sudden my GPS, hey, next exit in 1/2 whatever, you need to turn in how many ever feet. So I kind of come awake and I kind of look out there. And as I look towards where my exit is going to be on my right, I noticed something that I really didn't like. There's this long line leading up to the exit. Apparently something had happened off of the exit, and this exit had a long, big backup. And as I saw it from afar, I realized that I had two choices. Choice number one is I could go, oh, my trip's going to be a little bit longer than I expected because there's a line, and I should be a good, decent human, especially since I'm a pastor and I'm a follower of Jesus and I speak to everyone and tell them they should love others for Jesus every Sunday, right? I should just go and get to the end of the line, right? And then the other side of me said, well, why would you do that? Where would you do that when you can just slow roll it? Don't look at anyone because they give you the international howdy doody sign, right? But you can slow roll beside them, right? And then right as there's a gap in between the car, right at the turn, you just cut in front of people and you will like get there faster. And I was thinking about these two things, and all of a sudden as I was thinking about which one I should do, I had already made the decision because I had passed the end of the line. And so I said, well, it's not really my fault anymore, God. Like, I really need to do this now, right? And so I didn't look, and so I kind of just slow rolled it, and I'm pretty good timing, it's just, how do I time? It's like a video game, right? Crash Bandicoot, And so I waited to this little thing, and then I cut over, and you can hear all the horns, and I could feel the lasers on the back of my head, and all the people giving me that, and I was like, man, I'm glad that I didn't sit in line, right? But then I felt bad because here's what I knew. I was willing to benefit at the expense of others, right? If I cut in front of line, people that are waiting in line have to wait longer for every person that chooses to cut in line. Now, I've been in that line and seen other people do it, and man, I would love to have some words with those people. And that day, I was those people. And what I discovered is when I decide what's best, I naturally decide what's best for me. And here's the thing, you may be laughing at me, but it's possible, it might be possible that maybe when you decide what's best, you decide what's best for you. I mean, Come on. Can we just be honest here? No one ever tells a lie. And I don't know why they call it like a white lie or a little lie. I don't understand that. A lie is a lie. Can we just be honest? Like, a lie is a lie. But think about it. When you tell a lie, you're not telling a lie for the benefit of other people, right? You're just lying to yourself then. The reason that we lie is because it's what's best for us, right? Come on, right? When we gossip about other people, it's not because, I wanted you to pray for them. I want you to put them in your prayer journal. No. We gossip about people because we want to look good because it's best for us, right? I mean, you guys are so excited about this, I can tell, right? It's not just when we gossip. I mean, think about when we blame others. I mean, how rarely do you ever see someone go, yep, it's my fault. I want to stand up as a woman. I want to stand up as a man. And I want to go, that one was on me. I made the poor choice. I deserve the consequences. It's no one else's fault. But no, you know what we do? We blame. Even if it's 1% or 99%, we will always blame the other person because it's best for. It's why we'll cheat. It's why we'll cheat in sports and in games. It's why we'll take shortcuts in businesses. It's why we'll do things that aren't necessarily right, not because it's good for other people, because it's best for us. It's why we'll steal. Some of us have actually stolen things, but sometimes we steal people's ideas, we steal their credit. We'll steal from the big companies because they don't really do it. And we don't do it because it's good for the little people out there. We do it because it's best for us. It's why we'll manipulate or exploit other people or pressure them to do things that they don't want to do. Not because it's good for them, because it's what's best for. When we decide what's best, we naturally pick what's best for us, which leads us to a truth. Listen, it doesn't matter whether you came here today and you have no faith. It doesn't matter whether you came here today and you grew up in a different kind of faith and you have different faith. It doesn't matter if you came here today and you grew up in church as a follower of Jesus since you were a little kid. This is a truth that we've all experienced, and it's our opening truth this morning. Our self-serving nature creates harm and hardship for others, right? When I cut in front and cheated the line, I made it more painful for someone else. And you know this. You've experienced this. You've experienced the harm and hardship when someone else was self-serving and left you on the short end of the stick. And here's the problem that you already know. You hate this. I hate this, especially when it happens to us. We go, bad world, right? Except here's the problem. I do this too. I'm part of the problem. And this is going to shock you, but you might be part of the problem. We might be part of the problem because the very thing we hate about life is the very thing that we all do. And it leaves you and I asking one of life's toughest questions. How do we get rid of this old nature that is self-serving, that creates harm and hardship for others? And this is the great news this morning. It's why I get so fired up. It's why I love God, Jesus, and the Bible. Listen, Jesus came to answer this very question. And matter of fact, here's the good news. The answer to this question of how do we get rid of this old nature so we don't create harm and hardship, listen, that answer isn't confusing and it isn't complex. Matter of fact, it is so simple that a child could understand. And if you're really smart, you're probably thinking, Matt, if the answer to this question isn't confusing and it isn't complex, then what's the problem? And it's because you know something and I know something. Just because something is simple doesn't make it easy to do, nor is it popular. Can I get an amen? Some of you might be confused. What I mean is it's simple but not easy to do or not popular. Like, come on. You know the best way to financial health is all you have to do is something really simple. It's called save. Right? That's why you're laughing. That's why everyone's chuckling, right? You know it's simple, but it's not fun to do. Can I get an amen? You know what? We all know it's simple. You want to be healthy physically? Just eat and exercise. Not rocket science, right? Simple, but not really popular. We want to eat, not exercise, and then take a pill to make us be in shape. It's not really popular to go, listen, there's something simple. It's just not necessarily easy to do, and it's not the popular thing. And we're going to see as we go forward, the answer to this is really simple, but not really popular. And so what I want to do this morning to help us answer this question, how do we get rid of this old that we seem stuck to, where we put ourselves ahead of others at their expense and add to what's wrong with the world? So this morning I'm going to share 3 truths that will help us answer that question, but I need to warn you, these truths are truths, and they might be a little bit of something that you might not want to hear, but nonetheless are true. And here's the first one I want to share this morning was this. Jesus brought something that was brand new. Jesus brought something that was brand new. And here's the great thing. This isn't even my idea. This is Jesus said this. Listen, I didn't say, we see this in the eyewitness account of the gospel in Luke. It says this. After supper, he took a cup of wine and said, this is the cup of the new covenant. Like Jesus isn't, like I'm not the one saying Jesus brought something. Jesus says, listen, I'm creating a new covenant between God and his people, an agreement confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you. Jesus tells us that he is coming to do something new. Listen, Jesus didn't come to rearrange the old rituals and rules. That's not why he came. Well, what is this new that Jesus came to do that is so different from the old fix or the old covenant that God had in place? Well, God tells us in advance that when he's going to fix things, what this new looks like. And we see this in Ezekiel, and we're going to put it up on the screen. It says, and this is God speaking, it says, I will give them an undivided heart. I will put in them a new spirit in them, and I will remove from their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. You see, the old way, the way God used to deal with people is he gave them these rules and these rituals, and they would follow them, and the goal was kind of this outside behavior would trickle in and impact the inside of them. But the problem was the old way of the outside rules and rituals to impact the inside didn't work. Can I get an amen? So Jesus says, no. I came to do something brand new. What I'm going to do is instead of the rituals and the rules on the outside changing your heart, we're going to change you from the inside and change your heart. That way your actions will reflect what's on the inside. God came not to give us a bunch of new rules or rituals, but to change our hearts. Let me give you an example of kind of what I'm talking about. Now, when I was in my early 20s, I was buying my second car, and the reason I was buying my second car is because I had my first car for 5 days and I wrecked it. And so if there are any parents here, your kids are going to wreck their car, just letting you know ahead of time. Okay, so I wrecked my car, I was searching for a new car, and as I was driving around the middle of town, there was this car, and this car, man, it had one of the nicest paint jobs I've ever seen. I don't know who the paint people were, but it was this sky metallic blue. And man, it was on a muscle car, and it was just, I'm telling you, to this day, I have rare to see a paint job. Sky metallic, and it had these chrome Krager rim, man, it was fly. I mean, I drove, for old people, that means really nice and sharp, right? And so like this car was awesome. And so I went to look to buy this car with my dad, my adopted dad, and we looked at the car, and the problem was it was a convertible, which I was super pumped about having a convertible, right? But the problem is it had rotted and rain had come in and it ruined the seats, it ruined the car, and it ruined all the electronics. Then we popped the hood and it was a muscle car, but the problem was this was an experimental muscle car. They had put a V6 where there was supposed to be a V8, and it just didn't really work well. That's why it had sat there and not sold. But I told my dad I wanted this car. He said, son, you don't understand. The engine isn't what it needs to be. It doesn't matter what you do to the outside. This car's never going to be what you want to be. I'll fix it, Dad. I'll work on it. And he says, okay, son, you go ahead and bump your head against that wall. And so I said, sure, I'll run straight into that wall. So I bought the car, right? And you know what I did? I spent lots of money and time, and I chromed out some stuff, and I put a new rag top on. It was white. It was beautiful. We redid the carpet and the seats, and I put a sound system. I was the person you hate. I had those big woofer speakers in the back seat. I'd drive up behind people. They couldn't even hear their own music. All I could hear was my stuff. I was going, woo, right? It was so beautiful. The problem is the paint job and the wheels didn't fix the problem, which was the engine wasn't what it needed to be. And it was the problem the whole time I owned the car. And you might go, what does this have to do with Jesus bringing something brand new? And you need to understand, Jesus doesn't come to put a new paint job and rims on the old covenant and rearrange the rules and rituals. Jesus came to bring something brand new, to change us from the inside out. And here's the thing. Well, if Jesus came to bring something brand new, was the old bad? Do we not need the old? Like, did God get it wrong? Was the old that God gave this Jewish nation, these rules and these things, was that bad or wrong? And the answer is no. As a matter of fact, that's not even my answer. That's actually Jesus' answer, which leads to observation number 2, which is this. Jesus didn't undo God's interim fix. He finished it. And the great thing is, I didn't even say this. Jesus said this. We find this in the eyewitness account in one of the Gospels. We're going to put it up on the screen. Here's the words of Jesus. Don't think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to... You know, on one of Jesus' most famous messages called the Sermon on the Mount, right? Jesus is teaching people, and he says, listen, you don't understand. I didn't come to get rid of the law. You know, like not murdering someone's like really good rule. Anyone like that rule? I like that rule, right? Please don't murder me. I like my life, right? Please don't steal from me. Please don't lie to me. Like, we all think those are good things that still should exist, right? And so Jesus is saying, listen, I didn't come to get rid of those things. Those things weren't bad. I came to fulfill them. And listen, Jesus didn't lower the bar. Jesus raised the bar. Matter of fact, when Jesus was talking about this, Jesus looked out to the crowd and says, listen, you don't understand, God's original command was do not murder. I'm here to do something new. I'm here to tell you, if you hate your brother or your sister from your heart, you're guilty as murder, because it starts in the heart. That is the heart of the problem, no pun intended. Jesus didn't lower the bar. He raised the bar, saying, not only should you not commit murder, you shouldn't hate your brother or sister from your heart. Jesus said, listen, you should commit rape or adultery or abuse people sexually. You shouldn't do that. That's bad. Jesus didn't get rid of that. Matter of fact, Jesus raised the bar. Jesus says, listen, if you look at someone to objectify them for their sexuality, you are already doing that wrong thing in your heart. Jesus didn't come to get rid of all those things. Those things were all good. Jesus actually came to fulfill them, and there was a reason why Jesus came to fulfill them. It's because we couldn't. You see, all those laws, those things that God told us to do, were basically like a mirror. And we kept looking at it, trying to do good, but it revealed in our heart there was something wrong. Jesus didn't come to abolish them or get rid of them. He came to fulfill them, and he came to fulfill them because we couldn't. Matter of fact, in the eyewitness account of the Gospel of John, we see what Jesus says. Jesus is on the cross. Jesus has been spit on. Jesus has been abandoned. He's been betrayed. He's been brutally tortured. And as they nailed him to the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And he cries out and asks for a drink. And it says, when he received the drink, Jesus said, it is finished. Well, what's finished? Jesus was perfect. He fulfilled the law, all the requirements and the rules and the rituals of the Old Testament. Jesus fulfilled them. And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. And the other biblical accounts, the eyewitness account says, in the temple, the curtain torn to, meaning that Jesus now was the way to God, not through a temple ritual and rule process. Jesus, the only perfect human who completed all the law, the innocent one, died in the guilty's place. He died in my place. He died in your place. He died in our place. That's why it is finished. He completed and fulfilled the law. That's why in our relationship with God, you and I never have to worry about, is God happy with me? Jesus already completed it. He did it all. Our goal is not to appease God. Our goal is to apply his love to the world around us. I'll give you an example of what I'm kind of talking about when I'm talking about finished and fixes. This is probably 7 to 10 years ago. It was, I think, a Saturday night. It was before church. It was Saturday night. I was kind of sitting there chilling. It was kind of early in the evening. I'd say 6 or 7. It was about this time of the year. It was dark outside already. And it was kind of rainy and cold. I could hear the rain. And all of a sudden, I heard this loud thunderclap. Bang! And then all of a sudden, there was a pop. And then I heard this big, loud crashing sound. And I go, that doesn't sound good. And I look at my house and go, everything's good. I'm good. And then about 5 minutes later, I hear chainsaws. And so what I pictured together, which has happened, is lightning must have struck a tree must have hit someone's house, and someone's out there trying to get on it. And then I did something stupid, because once you look, like you're obligated. So I opened my shades and I looked out, and right across from my house are my neighbors. And there's this tree that had fallen through their roof, right? And it had a hole, and it was raining, it was pouring. And I looked out there and I said, should I go help them? Which the obvious answer was yes, but I was hoping my wife said, no, you should stay inside where it's warm and dry and be a jerk and not help your neighbors. She didn't say that. So I went out in the rain and helped them. And so what we did is we got the tree off, and then we took this tarp and we covered the roof and put it all on. And we kind of created this temporary solution in the middle of a storm. Now, here's the amazing thing. That solution wasn't bad or wrong. It was only temporary. It was a great solution. It's exactly what we should have done. It was exactly what was needed in that moment for that time, because it covered the hole that was there. But my neighbors didn't leave that tarp on there. Eventually, they finished it and completed it, so it was the way they were supposed to do. Jesus is God's fulfillment of his original promise to fix what is broken. Jesus didn't come to undo the old thing. He came to finish it. Which leads us to truth number 3. Now, this is the part, now I want to warn you ahead of time. This is the part where you're probably not going to like me, because no one at the first ever said amen or smiled at me. This is the part that's going to be a little bit hard to hear. It's the beginning of the part where you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good, but it's true. And so I just need us to take an honest look. And here's the third truth that I want to point us to. Jesus brought a new that's the opposite of the old. Jesus brought a new that's the opposite of the old. And so we kind of need to remind ourselves, what was the old that Jesus is replacing with the opposite? And we're going to put it up on the screen. Remember, we said that God, when he was creating this new family, the way he's going to reach the old family was to work and give this new family privilege. Like the way that you got to have God be in your life back in those days is you had to be born a Jew. And the Jews weren't chosen because they were good or better, but because God gave them favor. They had some privilege, and as Jewish people, they had some privileges even among their own kind of like their people. And then God gave them power. Their armies wouldn't be defeated. They'd be able to defend their nation. No one would be able to come in and take from them. They'd be able to be secure and safe and have an economy, and they were able to be prosperous. And what God did says is, listen, if you follow the rules and the rituals, you will have privilege, power, and prosperity. And when you display this, the world around you will see that and be attracted. And that is the old way that God used to work. But that's the old way, not the new way, because Jesus brought something new. And again, all I'm sharing with you today is Jesus' words. Like, it's him. If you get mad, take it up with him when you see him, okay? In Mark 10:45, we're going to see what the new is. For even the Son of Man. Now I want to stop there. Jesus is saying, for even the Son of Man. The Son of Man was a title for the Messiah, that when God would show up in the flesh, there would be a day where there would be one who would come and fix everything that's broken. God would show up in the flesh, for even the Son of Man, which means Jesus humbled himself. I mean, God put on a human suit. He was humble. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to what? I mean, if there was anyone that deserved to be doted on, if there's anyone who deserved to receive, it was Jesus. But Jesus says, I give up my right to receive so that I may serve. He washed the disciples' feet. He healed. He served by going on the cross. And he says, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And in this is exactly what followers of Jesus should look like. We should be humble, we should serve, and we should be generous. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to give his life as a ransom. This is the new. This is when Jesus with his disciples, right before he goes to the cross to conquer hell and death. Listen, you may not believe that, but the historical fact is the tomb is empty. He's the only person that conquered hell and death. And before that, he said, a new command I give you, love one another as I. See, when you and I determine what love is, it'll always benefit us. And he defines what that is. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life. So we see that now the difference between the old and the new. We're going to put it up here on the screen. Where it used to be you had to be Jewish to have a relationship with God and be privileged. Now we're humble. And listen, it's open to anyone regardless of race, color, creed, education, or your political viewpoint. For even the Son of Man came and he humbled himself and was obedient to the death on a cross. The new that Jesus brought to substitute for privilege was humility. And where it used to be you would execute power as a Jewish person, Jesus says no longer do we use our power, we use serving to impact it. And where he said there was prosperity, listen, it's not about how prosperous you are. You don't get a car, you don't get a car, you don't get a car. It's about how generous you are. And by the way, these things, privilege, power, and prosperity, aren't bad. It's just that the people abuse this because when we decide what's best, we will always decide what's best for. And by the way, the only people that can change the world, if this is true, are people who have these things. But it doesn't matter how much or what you have. You can be humble, you can be serving, and you can be generous. And by the way, this new that Jesus brought, oh man, the religious leaders of the day hated Jesus. And by the way, probably some church people might hate this message. Because you think because your grandma went to church or because you're American or whatever it is that you do or you're for the right party, that somehow you are privileged by God. And the truth is that's not how it works anymore. That everyone can be humble and that none of us deserve it, that it's a free gift because Jesus died on the cross. It's not about the power that we hold. We don't want to hold power. The church's thing to impact the world is not to have power politically, socially, or economically. It is to serve others in love. It's not about being prosper, having all the money and doing all this and, White House and picket fence. It's about how generous we are. And Jesus is new, offended the Pharisees and the religious leaders so much they crucified him. And I wonder how many of us in church know that Jesus came to bring humility, serving, and generosity, but as we kind of grow up in church and we read a little bit of the Old Testament, we go, oh man, that privilege, that power, that prosperity thing, that's pretty cool. I want me some of that. So you know what, man? The rest of the world, you guys should be humble, and you should be serving, and you should be generous. But God's going to bless me. I get a car, I get a car, I get a car. And we blend the old with the new and ruin it. If I had to sum it all up in a single sentence, I'd sum it up this way. Or I'd do it this way. Listen, the old, which is religion and rebellion, I thrive at the expense of others. The new that Jesus brought is I help others thrive even at my own expense. This is really popular, but this is what's broken with the world. Like when you see this, you know this. I don't have to tell you. You can be a kid and go, listen, if I thrive at the expense of others, that's what's wrong. And the new that Jesus brought to fix that is I help others thrive even at my own expense. And to sum it up, we're going to put it this way. Trying to blend the old covenant with the new covenant results in hypocritical reputation. Because here's what happens. On Sunday and at church, we go, yay, Jesus. Jesus is the way. It's forgiveness. It's grace. It's mercy, right? Jesus was humble. He was serving. He was generous, right? That's what we should be, right? But then when we go out and live the world, what we really want is we want God to give us prosperity. We want God to give us power. And we want God to give us privilege. And the world sees that while we tell them to live one way, we choose to seek another way. And the brand of Jesus is dinged not because of the new that Jesus brought, but because of the old that we bring to the new that he gave us. And here's the thing. Jesus knew this would happen. Matter of fact, this is even my idea. Again, I'm going to give you straight Jesus. We're going to go to Luke. Here's what Jesus said. He told him this parable. No one tears a piece of a new garment to patch an old one. Otherwise, they will have torn a new garment, and the patch from the new one will not match the old. He says, listen, you wouldn't take some new material and then cut it all up and mess that new material to patch something's old because the old has been washed and you put the new one on there. As soon as you wash it, it's going to rip off and it won't match anyway. So when you try to do the two, you're going to have two pieces that are now ruined. He says, if you don't get that, let me just make sure you're getting it. And he goes on to tell them this. He says, no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins and the wine will run out and the wineskins will be ruined. And he's basically saying when you try to mix the old with the new, it gets ruined. He says, no, new wine must be poured into new wineskins. And then he tells the kicker right here at the end. No one after drinking the old wines wants the new, for they say the old is better. The old is better. I want it like I was when I was a kid. I want it like I was back in the day. On the back of the day, you died young. Aren't you glad for modern technology? And so that's what happens when we don't let go of the old, where we want power and privilege and prestige, instead of the new that Jesus brought, which was to be humble, which was to serve and to be generous. Close with a true story that I think will illustrate kind of the whole idea of this deal. When we were younger, my wife and I, we have two kids, and they were probably about 5 and 7, and I was on Young Life staff. My wife worked inside the home. She did not work outside the home, but raising two kids while I was mostly gone is a full-time gig. So financially, we were kind of like, kind of right on the edge. We weren't poor, but we were just kind of middle of the road, just barely kind of surviving, right? And so, my daughters, they always talk about today about how they were so deprived. They had to watch PBS. They didn't get to watch Disney growing up. Like we just couldn't afford the cable channel, so they're just like, hey, we get basic. You don't get Disney. You just get to watch PBS, And so they're always like, oh, we had to watch Caillou, and we had to watch, Author. Oh, we were so traumatized. Yeah, you're so traumatized. But anyway, we had this computer, and we had one of those old, those things, those towers like this, and a little mouse, and we had one of those big monitors someone had given us, and the girls had put a magnet on it because we told them not to put a magnet on it, and they put it on a magnet, messed up the screen. But anyway, there was this new game that had come out that all their friends were playing. It was called Club Penguin. And the idea is you would have this little penguin and you would give it food and it had this little town and you could talk to other friends, and it was kind of the safe thing of kind of like social media but on on a computer. And my girls were like, Dad, can we get Club Penguin? So I did some research and you could do some parental blocks on it. I was like, that's great, we'll do it. And so it was like a small little fee to have a monthly thing. And so I went to buy it and download it. And when I went to go download it, this little thing came up and it says, your computer must have this much like memory, this much gig, and this much like RAM, all this technical jargon to say, to run this program, you need to have this. But I knew from a fact that my old computer didn't have any of the new stuff, and I did what all guys do, right? If it doesn't work, you just try it anyway, right? Right, come on, guys. You just use some duct tape, you hammer, you don't care if it's a square peg and a round hole. You just try harder. If I just hit it harder, right? So I was a moron. I just said, I'm going to download it anyway and just hope it works, right? And so I downloaded it, but I downloaded the new software onto an old computer that couldn't handle it. And so it didn't work. It was always glitching. It always had problems. It didn't function the way it was supposed to. And all of you were thinking, you're a moron. Yes, but you're listening to me. And so the joke's on you. And so, and you might be going, what does that have to do with that? And I go, you couldn't take the new and put it into something old because it wasn't designed for that. And when you took something new that isn't designed for the old and you put it in there, it doesn't work. And you might laugh at me, but I wonder how many of us are trying to hold on to the old of rebellion where I decide, or it's power, prestige, and privilege, and we're trying to bring the new into that, and we wonder why we're ruining the reputation in the name of Jesus. And so I want to leave us with a simple question. It is simply a real question. Is your relationship with Jesus causing anyone other than you to thrive? If your relationship with Jesus is just about your relationships and your well-being and your wealth, maybe you're holding on to the old. Because when we're in a relationship with Jesus, we help others thrive even at our own expense. When we decide what's best, it is no longer what's best for us. It is what is best for others in a way that honors Jesus. Let me pray. Hey, God, thank you. Thank you, though we repeatedly mess up. God, that you chose to chase us. And God, you didn't ransom us with heaven's junk. You sent your one and only Son, who was tortured, abandoned, and betrayed. Even though he was innocent and he fulfilled the law, he took our place. And he brought a new way where any one of us can be in a relationship with you, where anyone, regardless of our situation, can be world changers. God, that you've opened, this new way is open to anyone and everyone. We can all humble ourselves. We can all serve, and we can all be generous if we're willing to let go of the old. So, God, I pray that if we hear your small, still voice speaking to our hearts today, that we would choose to let go of the old, and we'd say yes to this new heart that Jesus wants to create inside of us. Not through rituals or rules, but through a personal relationship that is freely given. Thank you, God, that even when we were choosing to do what's best for us, you did what was best for us, even though it cost you your one and only Son. May we follow your example so that Jesus is seen as awesome as he truly is. This is our hope and our prayer. In Jesus' name. And anyone that agreed said, amen.
If you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey or continue to support SouthPoint, you can connect to a small group, serve on a team, and give financially by clicking the box on the right. To watch other sermons from SouthPoint Church, click the playlist on the left. Click the logo to subscribe.